Hello, this is a presentation for my 615 class about the two counseling agencies, ABC Counseling and the Baby Fold. This information was collected from two interviews, one with Ms. Mitchell, who is the executive director of ABC Counseling, and one Reverend Lori Budemeyer, who is the chaplain at the Baby Fold. So ABC Counseling and Baby Fold, and those individuals were the source of a lot of this information, as well as their websites. But mostly the information from the women supported by the websites, like fact checking. So I did these interviews on August 1st, one at 8:30 in the morning and one at 2:30 in the afternoon. And I first noticed how friendly and welcoming and really child friendly and welcoming the ABC Counseling Center's um, waiting room and offices were. There's a lot of toys, a lot of positive, affirming words, a lot of sources of hope everywhere. And in the baby fold, they have multiple buildings on their campus, and I was taken into one that definitely seemed like an administrative building. These buildings are also from the 1960s. So I entered a side door and walked into a hallway, and then there were different offices, and I walked into one of them. The hallways were darker and were carpeted, and on the walls were large, blown up photographs of the agency's history. The office of the counselor, or the reverend counselor that I met with, was blue and gold and very calming, with little hints of humor in places and lots of friendly, kind invitations to comfort and prayer and believing in your own personal strength and then God's desire to support you. So, those were the first things I noticed and the source of this information. The history of these organizations, ABC Counseling is about 30 years old, and the Baby Fold is now over 100 years old. They are both nonprofits. One is completely they call it non-sectarian and was meant to be as unbureaucratic as possible. And one is run by the Methodist Church, a ministry of the Methodist Church. And the founder and the first executive director of the ABC Counseling, Lynn Willard, in her almost 20-year career, saw a real need for adoption support, especially folks who wanted to adopt but were not seen as ideal by the community. So, older parents, LGBTQ, AI parents, and the baby fold was also started from a need. It was during the time of the orphan train, and these deaconesses who were like missional women who were cross-trained in nursing and in seminary, a religious school, saw like these orphan trains coming out. And then because they couldn't be helpful on the farm, babies and toddlers weren't being collected. So they took those babies and toddlers in, and then through their church lady avenues, which is what the Reverend said, found these babies' homes. So both these agencies were started from a need that women saw in their community, and they are still going strong today. With a lot of change in the baby folds case, the Reverend was very clear that you don't survive over 100 years without changing. And what's really led their changes or led their decisions to change has been like, who is the least of these? Like, who needs us? She held up her phone at one point and it was like a foregrounded sheep and a backgrounded Jesus. And it was meant to remind her always that you need to be moving towards like the little lost lamb. So, the administrative structure of these agencies is both similar and different. They both have a board of directors, but then because the baby fold is much larger, I mean, it's like the board of directors at a company, and then the leaders in the company, and then the staff underneath them. And the ABC counseling is like the board of directors and the executive director, who she jokingly said that they're really just in charge of her. And then she has a financial officer that helps her with the budget. And then there are therapists, there's a clinical director, and the executive director also runs the adoption arm of the agency. And then there's office staff in both places, and janitorial staff. And in the baby fold, there's teachers because, so this is kind of getting into staff and credentialing, but they run a school. So there's also teachers. But those are those administrative structures. ABC's mission is to help youth with problematic sexual behaviors, as they put it, and adoption services. And they do not like, they work with, so this, the baby fold does not do this. The ABC counseling goes from like a mother who wants to adopt or wants to give her baby up for adoption all the way through like post-adoption services. The baby fold no longer facilitates adoptions. They work with families post-adoption. They work with through a program called Healing Start, which I'm also being certified as a CASA right now. And I just learned about this program through CASA, but through a program in our state called Healing Start, they get, they go to like the public health department where mothers may be getting OBGYN care, they're not insured, and say to those mothers, like, how would you like some help? And they really help the mother who does not want to adopt like be able to focus on baby and being a good mother. So it's like a prevention program. So they try to eliminate barriers to money, food, childcare, mental health, all of that, so that mother and baby can bond and there can be a positive relationship. But again, they don't really facilitate adoption anymore. And they work for post-adoption, they work for mother and baby, they work for children who have been abused, like are in the foster care system and need mental health services. But interestingly, not sexual abuse. They actually contract with the ABC counseling if a child is experiencing or has experienced sexual abuse or is exhibiting sexually problematic behaviors. ABC counseling does not work with adults unless individual therapist is okay with seeing a amount of adults they can handle along with their children caseload. Or in our state, if you've been put on the juvenile sexual registry, you can appeal to get off of it after a certain number of years. And then ABC does the assessments of those adults. So it might be like a 26-year-old. And when I was speaking with Ms. Miller, she was currently in the process of working with 3 youth that she had counseled when they were initially put on the registry, and she was doing their reassessment and the court report of whether or not they could be moved from the registry. So that's what each agency is, the mission and goals. Um, Services and funding, I've kind of already gotten into that. Um, both agencies serve primarily children. The Baby Fold also serves families. Both agencies do a certain amount of psychoeducation and community training. The Baby Fold actually does certification programs that individuals in the community can get, like therapists, teachers. Um, they are both funded serious amount by the state, Medicaid, private contracts with like DCFS, and they both do a large amount of fundraising, which is not on this slide, but ABC also, like they take volunteers, they list on their website, and that can be like for working at their fundraising events. So they both do a large amount of fundraising. Clientele and staff, I've really already gotten into their clientele. ABC is staffed by mostly master's degree counselors. Licensure is optional because they take care of supervision, so they do all that. Um, the baby fold is the bachelor's a minimum. Because they staff teachers and they staff they might have like master's degree level educators in the school or supervising the education of the children who are being served there. But they also have MSWs, LPCs, MSWs, or LCPCs. So those are the different credentials of the staff. Um, ABC therapists see more clients a week. They also write court reports because they're more involved with the like court mandated counseling because of sexual abuse, which the baby fold does not do. They say that they use eclectic therapy methods, and Ms. Mitchell spoke about this in terms of like every client has unique needs, just like every therapist has unique needs. And she rolled this into the supervision models at the agency. Every therapist has weekly supervision, and at that time with new counselors, the clinical director was doing needs assessments for what kind of supervision those new counselors would need. The baby fold counselors have a slightly smaller caseload because they're traveling to people's homes to deliver therapeutic services. They also do an extensive amount of trainings. That's a large part of their job. And then their methods, are probably eclectic too, right? But in speaking to the Reverend and discussing with her, they, as an agency, believe in a lot of person-centered therapy, narrative, solution-focused, listening to the client to see to facilitate them recognizing the strengths they already have. I've been in CASA training. We get asked regularly to focus on the strengths of the family, the strengths of the family. And the Reverend used that language a lot too, helping the family recognize their strengths. And then um, praising the knowledge they already have, the resources they already have, and then helping them realize the resources they may need. Because as the Reverend explained, like they're only working with whatever they have and they don't know what they need. So after praising the resource and the knowledge they do have, it's the counselor's job to help them get the knowledge and skills that they could use, they need. After this experience of interviewing these two individuals, these interviews were almost an hour and a half long. I mean, they were like 5 minutes short of an hour and a half long. And they were just big conversations. Like, I didn't really even get the questions out. Like, I had sent the questions in inquiry emails and said that I would like to meet with these folks. And actually, I got responses from other agencies that were like, that's just all on our website. If you want to come in for an interview or for a tour, that's fine. Um, but these women really sat down with me and had real conversations, which I deeply appreciated. And in reflection to friends afterward, I said, like, both women were very cognizant of like systemic failures. And like they were major issues in delivering services and the reasons why families are in the state, children are in the state they're in. Um, and Ms. Mitchell focused a lot on the solutions and groups that she's a part of to help fix the system. And while the Reverend did the same, there was much more a focus on like people walking in faith are the reason this can work. And when we support those people and when we remember that God always has our best interests in mind, we will find success. Both were completely missional women who have the best interests of their clients and their communities in their hearts and minds. And I just found these interviews and this learning experience to be a really positive one for my future. Thank you.